Hello, everyone. Angiosperms, after growing and developing to a certain stage, enter their reproductive phase. This phase mainly involves flowering, pollination, and fertilization to complete the combination of sperm cells and eggs. That's what I want to share with you today: flowering, pollination, and double fertilization. First, the flowers. When the pollen grains in the stamen and the embryo sac in the pistil have matured, the calyx and corolla open to reveal the stamen and pistil, a process called flowering. Flowering habits mainly include the age of first flowering, flowering season, diurnal flowering periodicity, and the duration of the flowering period. The flowering age of different plant species and varieties is different. Annual and biennial plants can flower after just a few months of growth, while perennials bloom at a certain age and then bloom every year. For example, peaches are 3 to 5 years old, pears are 5 to 6 years old, and linden trees are 20 to 25 years old. Some plants, such as bamboo, bloom only once in their lives. China is rich in plant resources, known as the mother of the world garden. Different plants have different flowering seasons. For example, peach blossoms and orchids bloom in spring, lotus flowers and pomegranates bloom in summer, chrysanthemums and osmanthus flower in autumn, camellia and wintersweet flower in winter. The diurnal periodicity of flowering of different plant species is different. Some plants flower in the morning, such as the morning glory. Some bloom at noon, such as the sunflower. Some bloom in the evening, such as the purple jasmine. Some bloom late at night, such as epiphyllum. At the same time, some are open by day and closed by night, such as flax, and some are open by night and closed by day, such as datura. The time a plant goes through from its first bloom to its last is called the flowering period. Peaches, apricots, and pears bloom for only a few days, cotton 80 to 90 days or more. Tomatoes and pumpkins have plenty of flowers from spring until late autumn. The time a flower opens is also called the flowering period. Wheat only 5 to 30 minutes. Rice takes 1 to 2 hours. The epiphyllum fades in a few hours. 4 days for tomatoes. Peach, plum about 4 to 8 days. The flowers of some tropical orchids may bloom for 1 to 2 months each. The length of flowering period of plants is related to the characteristics of plants and the environmental conditions. It is important to know the flowering time of plants in crossbreeding. After flowering, the anther is split and the mature pollen grains are transferred to the pistil stigma by external force, which is called pollination. There are two types of pollination: self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination is the delivery of pollen from the stamen to the stigma of the pistil in the same flower, such as wheat, sesame, and so on. The conditions of self-pollination were 1. Bisexual flowers. 2. Simultaneous maturation of pollen grains and the embryo sac. 3. The stigma has no physiological barrier to the germination of its own pollen or the development of its male gametes. The advantage of self-pollination is that it can overcome the deficiency of external conditions. But there are also disadvantages. The genetic diversity of self-pollinated plants is reduced, and it is easy to degrade. But we can use self-pollination to purify crop varieties. For example, maize, after 4 to 5 successive generations of self-pollination, will form a relatively stable inbred line. Cross-pollination refers to the pollination between different flowers. According to the different pollinators, there are mainly wind pollination and insect pollination and water and bird pollination as media. Some researchers have likened it to a matchmaker. It is a unisexual flower, or in bisexual flowers, the pistil and stamens do not mature at the same time, or the pistil and stamens are of different lengths or positions. Or when pollen falls on the head of the stylus and cannot germinate, cross-pollination is carried out. Cross-pollination is common in nature. Compared with self-pollination, cross-pollination is an evolutionary method. The heredity of male and female gametes differs greatly, and the offspring produced by combination have stronger vitality and adaptability. However, cross-pollinated plants are often restricted by conditions, which reduces the chances of pollination and fertilization, resulting in crop yield reduction, and artificial assisted pollination methods are often used in production to make up for it, such as corn. Fertilization is the process by which sperm and egg cells fuse with each other. The first step is the recognition between the pollen tube and the stigma. Only compatible pollen that is recognized by the pistil stigma can enter, leading to pollen germination. After the pollen grain reaches the stigma, the intine of the pollen grain protrudes outward through the germination aperture and continues to elongate, forming the pollen tube. Finally, the pollen tube enters the embryo sac. After the pollen tube reaches the embryo sac, its contents include the vegetative nucleus and 2 sperm cells. The vegetative nucleus quickly degenerates, and one of the 2 sperm cells fuses with the egg cell to become a zygote, i.e., the fertilized egg, which will later develop into the embryo. The other fuses with the polar nucleus to become the primary endosperm nucleus, which will later develop into the endosperm. This type of fertilization is called double fertilization. Double fertilization is a unique mode of fertilization in angiosperms. Let's take a look at the double fertilization process in conjunction with the animation. This is the developing pistil, the stigma on top, then the style, and the ovary below. The mature embryo sac consists of a large central cell containing the polar nuclei, two synergids near the micropylar end, an egg cell between them, and antipodal cells near the chalazial end. First, the stigma is used to identify the pollen tube. The accepted pollen reaches the stigma. Then the pollen tube stretches. The two sperm cells that reach the embryo sac fuse with the egg cell and with the polar nuclei, respectively. The fertilized egg will develop into the embryo, and the primary endosperm nucleus will develop into the endosperm. Biological implications of double fertilization. 1. The fusion of sperm and egg cells recombines the differing genetic material from both parents to form a zygote with dual heredity, which not only restores the original chromosome number of the plant and maintains the relative stability of the species' heredity, but also produces new genetic traits and provides the basis for variation. 2. In double fertilization, one sperm cell fuses with the two polar nuclei to form a triploid primary endosperm nucleus, which combines the genetic characteristics of the father and mother, is more physiologically active, which is absorbed by the developing embryo as nutrients, and has stronger vitality and wider adaptability. Double fertilization is not only the most evolved and most advanced form of sexual reproduction in the plant kingdom, but also a common feature of angiosperms. This lecture mainly introduces the content of flowering, pollination, and double fertilization. Today's lesson share here. We will see you next time.